What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you 5 100% I gave up on. A video I like to do roughly every year or so, simply to remind everybody that I am in fact a human being, and not a sophisticated AI designed to 100% games for seemingly no reason. But in all seriousness, while I do 100% a lot of games for reviews, what you don't tend to see are the ones I give up on for one reason or another. Now, doing this for as long as I have, that reason is 9 out of 10, going to simply be time. Oftentimes these games will simply take up too much time, they are conflicting with other releases in terms of release dates, etc. And while I might double back to them at one point or another, for the time being I have simply said, I have to keep it moving. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into this one. Now, first up on the list, we have Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. If you're unaware, this is a sort of definitive edition of Shin Megami Tensei 5 that added like a whole separate campaign to the game. And right away, I think this game is really, really cool. I like the way the battles work. I like that you have to sort of like recruit demons and can then upgrade them and combine them to get better stats along with you yourself as a character. It's really interesting, and a lot of the systems are really, really in-depth, and that's the kind of thing that speaks to me personally. However, I initially covered this game for a sponsored video. I had heard good things about the original, so this sort of remastered version was something I was curious about, and a sponsorship seemed like a great way to do that. But it is in messing around with those systems firsthand and everything that I realized 100% on this was conservatively going to take 200 hours, and that by itself is going to take me at least a couple weeks, and then the other games that released around this one, and the fact that the original base game had released years ago, meant that a sort of simple reward versus time investment was not looking good, and so ultimately I decided to pass on this one. But I will say that in the future this is one of those games I would like to double back to at some point when I do have the time, but time is a bit of a hot commodity. Nonetheless, though, very cool game. Now, second up on the list, we actually have another older title, I would say, and that is Pillars of Eternity 1, the original. I haven't 100% this for two reasons, and surprisingly, I had thought I had mentioned this previously, but I looked at my older videos on this subject, and I didn't mention it there at least. But it's been on my mind because Avowed is releasing early next year now, so that had me thinking about Aora in general, which Pillars of Eternity, that's the universe, is Aora. And while I really do love the universe they've built there, like I said, there's two reasons I haven't 100% this one. The first is more obvious if you've ever touched the Steam version of this game at all. You may be aware that there's actually an achievement for being a Kickstarter backer for the game itself, which means there is quite literally no way to 100% that legitimately of your own volition if you weren't one of those Kickstarter backers. Now, before people get at me in the comments, I am aware there is a workaround for this that, if I remember correctly, involves just grabbing somebody's save file who did have it, and the internet being what the internet is, that should be available. But in addition to that, the Pillars of Eternity series 1 and 2 have a challenge of sorts known as the Ultimate. This is very, very difficult. In fact, it's so difficult that for the second game, Deadfire, when they initially announced the challenge for that one, they quite literally said they thought it was impossible before a very specific bit of cheese with a couple of particular builds managed to actually make it possible. But because it's so rare and difficult for the second game, Obsidian has a plaque at their office of the first 12 people who ever did it, and they are handing out patches to the first 50 people to do it, which as far as I know is still ongoing. I don't believe they ever hit 50 people who have done that. And Pillars of Eternity 1 also has an achievement for essentially doing all of that as well, with their version of it, which, as you might expect, is also very difficult. Now, I'll be real with you, I don't know if I can do that or not. I think with enough time and effort I might be able to, but between that challenge and the Kickstarter achievement, I went, you know what, I think this one just isn't for me. And I sort of just let it lie there. And as it stands currently, I'm thinking that maybe in the future sometime when I'm sort of running out of old games to cover in between new releases, I might do stuff try to do that challenge for 1 and 2, or just other things I might be able to mix up the content with in a few years. But that's going to be quite some time from now, so I'm not super concerned about it. But definitely something to keep in my back pocket. And that brings us to number 3, however. And this is actually something a bit different for me, which might be the problem actually, which is Against the Storm, a really fantastic roguelite city builder. Now, generally speaking, I'm not super into city builders. However, I really like Against the Storm. Against the Storm takes a city builder, makes it a roguelite, and it comes together in a way that is really fun that I don't usually get from city builders. However, I've also found with this game that because of its roguelite nature and you constantly building up those cities and stuff, I just don't seem to have the stamina to play this game in like long bursts, which would kind of be necessary to 100% the thing with any attempt at a sort of concerted effort, which means that this game gets put into what is a bit of a rare category for me, which is simply that I like this game, but trying to 100% it would make me hate this game, and I would really prefer not to hate it. Which happens every so often, so it is what it is on that one, I'm afraid. Though that does bring us to number 4, which is Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin, a game you might very well be able to 100% by the time you manage to say its whole name. So, for the launch of Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, I was getting really into all the Warhammer stuff, and I was trying a lot of the different games and whatnot, which is what had me taking a look at Warhammer Age of Sigmar Realms of Ruin here, which is itself a real-time strategy game, and I haven't played a ton of those since StarCraft, to be real with you. And while I enjoy this game well enough for what it is, the reason I chose not to 100% it or do a proper review for this one is pretty simple, and that is that the gameplay got extremely repetitive after a little while. And while you can play with different factions and everything, once you've played so much of the game, it really does kind of feel like every match becomes the same match, or at least that's how it felt to me, which can be a little mentally taxing, to be honest. And that, in combination with just the fact that this game also has a big multiplayer component, which I'm always a little leery about trying to put into proper review after 100% format, because I don't think it fits super well, due to the nature of online stuff often changing and being iterated upon, makes for a bit of an annoying sort of chance for making my review obsolete, let's say. So for those reasons combined, Realms of Ruin just honestly seems to be a little more work than it was really worth it for, so I ultimately chose to just not do it, which is obviously what we're doing here. Though that does bring me to my final entry, which is Songs of Conquest, a relatively unique turn-based tactics title that released back in May. I took a look at it, made a video on it or two, and if you watch the channel much, to be honest with you, you might be very curious why I didn't review this one. It's kind of right up my alley. But ultimately, there's a whole host of reasons. Now, I will say I think Songs of Conquest is really cool, but it combines a whole bunch of mechanics from different genres and stuff in a way that just didn't quite land for me. In particular, outside of just the actual turn-based battles, you also have to manage your towns and stuff and build them up and whatnot, while also exploring the map and doing all sorts of stuff there, like managing resources, advancements, and almost 4X style of stuff, on top of trying to manage your armies, which wage the actual turn-based tactics portions. And that's to say nothing of all the, again, multiplayer components and stuff. And as cool as I think this game is for the things that it does, I can't help but honestly just feel really exhausted every time I try to look at and play this one. And given that it also released in the month of May when I was extremely busy with a bunch of other reviews, I looked at this title and simply made the call of, I don't have to review absolutely everything, which is where we're going to wrap up this video. So hopefully this gave you a little insight into the process behind some of what I do. A not insignificant portion of that is planning and research into titles and stuff on Steam that ultimately results in, admittedly, a little bit of survivorship bias in terms of the videos I actually put out, because what you don't see is all the videos I go, yeah, but I'm not going to make that one. And as a simple critique of myself, I would actually say that in some ways I think that can put a slightly too positive slant towards a lot of what I do actually do, because I am inherently more interested in those titles, which is why I try to push myself to take on RPGs and stuff that I think I might not like or can provide a particularly objective view of. Though I do think ultimately when you work in a very opinion-based job, a lot of what I do is just inherently a little biased, and I recognize that and try to adjust where I can accordingly, because I think games that are very, let's say, varied in their critical reception, I think are exceptionally worth reviewing, simply because then you can provide a sort of objective take that just simply presents all the information and tries to say whether or not you'd like a game based on what it offers. So again, just a sort of peek behind the curtain a little bit there. I'd try to cut myself off before I ramble on that for too long. In any event, I certainly hope you enjoyed this particular video. Truth be told, I really enjoy making these ones, bizarrely, because it gives me a chance to talk about some of these games that I otherwise have not. That said, though, I would love to hear what you have to say about them, which naturally means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.